looks good. And I believe you all can give an introduction to yourself. PAA, I'm excited to have you here with our leadership students. And so if you could all give a brief introduction to yourselves. I'd also like our students to give an introduction to themselves and where they're calling in from, just so we can have a good idea of who's all in the group.
Yeah, I like to let the students go ahead and introduce themselves first, and then we'll from there we'll go ahead and I'll allow Jay, and we'll go into the presentation.
I can start. My name is Catherine, and I'm calling in from Chandler, Arizona.
Catherine, Chandler, Arizona. Beautiful spot, honestly. Hi there. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, anybody else want to pick up from there?
I'll go ahead. Good morning, everyone. I'm Emma, and I'm calling in from Charlottesville, Virginia.
Charlottesville, Virginia. Wow.
Hi, I'm Christine. I'm calling in from Glen Carbon, Illinois.
Illinois?
I'm Taryn. I'm calling in from Kelowna, BC, in Canada.
This is beautiful. Good morning, y'all.
Morning. My name's Emily. I'm calling in from Glendale, Arizona.
Glendale, Arizona. Okay.
Morning, my name is Emily as well, and I'm calling in from Santa Cruz, California.
Good morning. And was that everybody?
Hi. My name is Kelsey, and I'm calling in from Flagstaff.
How's
Good
it
morning.
going?
Hi, I just joined. My name is Julia, and I'm calling in from Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Good morning. Nakwantawangva ma napaka manayan hopi matua nikyang tewa epkita. My name is Marie Makua, and I'm calling in from Flagstaff.
No, sayamo. All right. I believe that was everybody, right?
I think that's everyone. We have 3 more students. Cheyenne, who's from Cochiti, Pueblo, Wyatt, who's from Flagstaff, and someone else. Brenna, who is
Brenna
also
is
from
in
Flagstaff.
All right. Well, good morning, y'all. Get a drum roll, please, especially for y'all. Yeah. And I'm introducing Jay. Go ahead and take the stage.
Good morning, everybody. Hen gochanak menanak westi go tampove go gamihana. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jalen Little Bear. I am from the Pueblo of Santa Ana, also known as Tamaya. My pronouns are she, her. I am a descendant from Okewinge, Piccaries, Pueblos, Muskogee Creek, and Shawnee Nations of Oklahoma. I like to start off with the land acknowledgement. I'm calling in from Tamaya Pueblo, also known as Santa Ana. I was born and raised here. From an early age, I was always taught the Pueblo lifestyle and to appreciate it. And here is Trenton.
Hi there, y'all. My name is Trenton DeVore. I'm coming in from Albuquerque right now. I'm personally from Jemez Pueblo. I am a youth organizer with PAA. Pueblo Action Alliance is a community-driven organization that promotes cultural sustainability and community defense by addressing environmental and social impacts in Indigenous communities. So with that being said, we are an organization that propels, youth. We had made sure that we could do stuff along the lines of this this presentation of a community defense, and along the lines of allowing me to give me a platform to talk to y'all. We are teachers as much as we are students, and it doesn't matter how old we are, how young we are, we can continue to propel. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and keep on moving. All right. The Global Revolt of 1680. It is the first revolution in the so-called United States. It is an act of fighting against colonialization and Eurocentric cultures and ideals, and it was the mobilization of indigenous communities. So we are the descendants of Pueblo people who practiced community defense and fought in the 1680 Pueblo Revolution. For 340 years, we've had revolutionary minds creating and dismantling systemic racism. This goes all the way back to our roots, and we have to continue to water that. And it's a very beautiful process because it's allowed us to be who we are as melanated people. And we're gonna keep on moving, and I'm gonna allow Jay to take the stand.
All right, so we are Pueblo Action Alliance. Pueblo Action Alliance is a community-driven organization that promotes cultural sustainability and community defense by addressing environmental and social impacts in Indigenous communities. And as if you see on the right side of your screen, we have a list of our traditional core values. I'm going to go over the list. 1, respect. 2, consent. 3, protect sacred entities. 4, cultural sustainability. 5, community defense. 6, indigenous self-determination and sovereignty. 7, traditional and popular education. As unique as each of these core values are, so are all pueblos of New Mexico. They're very unique and different in their own ways, but all these core values essentially brings us together to protect our community. Next slide, Justin. Here we have the 10 points of unities. These 10 points of unities are tools that help us accomplish long-term goals and unifying and mobilizing our Pueblo communities. I'm gonna go over the list one more time. 1, to fight and protect our birthright as Pueblo Indigenous people. 2, to heal from the cycle of trauma and oppression, to heal the land and water. 3, to create intergenerational spaces to learn and grow. 4, to preserve Indigenous languages, traditional teaching, and oral his or her history. 5, to dismantle and eradicate oppressive systems of European occupations that have killed, harmed, and assimilated Indigenous peoples. 6, to build international solidarity with Indigenous global struggles. 7, to mobilize and unified Pueblo front. 8, to obtain land and water back. 9, to restore a balance of power among all peoples of all genders. Trenton, would you go on to the next slide?
The 3 principles of action. There are 3 principles of action that Pueblo action seems to revolve around. We have ceremonial action, civic action, and direct action. Ceremonial action doesn't have to mean dancing with our mocks on. It's also a means of being resistant. I mean, for me personally, it's my ceremonial action is also creating music. I am a hip hop artist. I'm a lyricist. So when I involve that into my work, it's speaking it into existence, create manifestations. So when I dance, it's, Pueblo people for the longest time up until about 50 years ago actually couldn't practice their religion. So and that's in the state of that's in the United States. I don't know how it is overseas, especially in Canada too as well. But I know that direct action is what the forefront of being from bottom up organizing essentially is. So as Pueblo Action Alliance keeps progressing forward, we're always adapting and changing and moving towards the relevant, so to say, which has allowed us and to be what we've been up to. And a lot of it has been amazing. Pueblo Action Alliance has given me and Jay a platform to speak our minds. I recently had a Peace of Mind Cultivated Expressions, which was an event that will take place as a youth-centric, gender infinite, and multicultural space. So it allowed me and others to have a platform to propel our music in a different light. I know since it's COVID-19, and we had to be socially distant, doesn't mean we have to be socially distant. I feel like, resistance doesn't always have to be, standing at the forefront, holding a sign. It can always be laughter. It could be enjoyment, the embodiment of what the oppressors always wanted, which was depression, and oppression. So if we can always seem to break from those cycles and what colonization breeds, then we can continue to be happy. And I feel like that's a beautiful process of what we can do. We have the cultivated indigenous resistance that Reyes was a part of. We have Chaco Will Never Be Ruins, which was a beautiful, beautiful zine, and just the living embodiment of what we do. Huh. But there is a lot that goes on. I'm gonna allow Jay to go into her talks. She has beautiful, beautiful things that go on with her too as well. Jay?
Thank you, Trenton. So like Trenton said, we were given an opportunity to basically do our own projects, which was amazing because Pueblo Action Alliance has given us an opportunity as youth to speak in a lot of places you don't see that. But mine, Talks with Grandma and Grandpa, was basically having a conversation about the current events that have been going on in 2020. This video talks about the Black Lives Matter movement and the civil rights movement, which my grandparents were also youth when it was all happening. So we are just talking and comparing. And also we had brought up the current global pandemic and what the youth should be doing to protect Pueblos, what they can be doing to protect the elderly, our language, our land. But this was all essentially just so that we can learn from our elders, but the elders can learn from us. And that's what this video is about. And you see at the bottom of my poster, you see a recent diagram of infographic of health effects that fracking does to our body. Next slide, Trenton.
Yes, of course. Our mutual aid efforts. This is what we've been doing. This has been our center focus, especially now during COVID. We have done a lot right here at the bottom. We have our PAA moms. Big shout out to everybody that has been a part of this. Down with the patriarchy, always, But along the sides of mutual aid work, we have been doing our best. We have thousands upon thousands of masks that we continue to receive, we continue to make, and we continue to ship out. Along the sides of that, we have a beautiful team that's always on hands, constantly taking tests, making sure that we provide a safe environment, not only for us, but for the people that we give these products to. Just last week, I had the opportunity of being at Global Action, and we had we had 100 or so backpacks that we had fitted with jackets, we had fitted with beanies, multiple socks, because that's what our unsheltered relatives seem to be needing the most, is a lot of socks. And I can see how that's essential, especially for me when I go hunting. I always wear 2 pairs of socks because it gets either I get my shoes wet or I get cold. And if that's how I'm dealing with it, I want to make sure that our unsheltered relatives are making sure that they have enough to provide, at least for themselves, in these dire moments, especially now when it's really cold. Jay, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to say, like, as Trenton said, we had given out masks to 30 plus tribal communities. And this is one of the most we could do with the current events of 2020. And that's all I gotta say.
All right. What is indigenous community defense? Well, it takes many shapes and forms. PAA defines community defense as a reflection of how Pueblo people protect, preserve, and fight for our existence. It's our birthright, being indigenous. We have to be a self-organizing, autonomous community to defend, educate, and care for our land in means of cultural preservation, indigenous resistance, and against colonization, what the symptoms bring. I was talking about that recently when I said it, when colonization came in, you know, it bred these ideals of perfection. And when we go onto social media sites nowadays, we have to be this ideal person that somebody imagines you to be. And I feel like that's where a lot of this depression lies too, as well. Colonization doesn't have to mean, you know, like genocide or even rape. It's the colonization and assimilation of our own minds and being adapted into a world that isn't ours. You know, it's very vile, but it's also very versatile too, because we can do a lot with it. You know, we can decolonize colonized spaces, which is a beautiful thing too as well. I don't know if anybody's ever taught you how to do that, but that's what PAA has taught me to do too as well. You know, they're like, well, do you know what decolonizing a colonized space means? And I simply did not. I was in awe at the things that they had taught me. And there's so much even beyond this community defense worksheet that PAA can offer. And, you know, going into that, you know, Jay has a beautiful process of understanding, you know, our overseas models, and I'll allow her to speak more on that.
Thank you, Trenton. So here we're really going to dive into other examples of indigenous community defense. First is the Zapatista movement in Chiapas, Mexico. Let's just start off with their motto, everything for the people and nothing for me. Speaks to bottom-up organizing, and by any means possible, we will do what we have to do in order to protect our ways of life, our cultural integrity, our land base, and our cultural resources that sit on the land base. Secondly, we look more in the Purepecha mountain community in Charmin. Excuse me if I say this wrong. I was still trying to learn how to say this all night. Michoacan territory, another example of an indigenous self-organized community defense, models the Purepecha people that were expressing their settler violence, expressing their exploitation of their forests by federal government aiding illegal logging. So they have reclaimed their forests by traditional government and societal structures to organize a successful model of indigenous community defense and what it looks like. They had based a lot of their organizing on the demands of safety, justice, and reforestation of their territory, which all aligns with indigenous core values. As you notice, it is nothing but women, so shout out to all the women in this chat. We are power. So, next slide, Trenton, please.
There you are.
Here we have in the Aboriginals of Australia. When we were looking at mutual aid, we looked at our Aboriginal relatives and what they were doing in Australia, demanding that there be defense against any outsiders from coming into their communities because their intent was to protect their elders, their language, and their youth. Same thing here is happening in Mexico with the Pueblos, shutting down our borders into the Pueblo communities to protect our elder, our youth, and our land. So we see a lot of similarities when it comes to community defense. We've been building relationships. our coworker and our mentor, Reyes Devor, 2 years ago, went down to the Guadalupe people and the Amazons with the indigenous peoples there. And what they were doing is self-organizing, protecting their territories by blockading, as the same here in the US. The indigenous communities here, when COVID hit, did not receive any support of federal national government system. And it had to come from within the communities. And that's why we had to use these examples to learn so that we can prepare and organize. I'll hand it to Trenton.
A big shout out to the Kōreni Kaiwa. It's amazing what they're doing. You know, Indigenous solidarity all around the world, all around the world. Well, Indigenous community defense. Well, especially Pueblo Indigenous community defense is a reflection of how Pueblo people protect, preserve, and fight for our existence. Community defense is our birthright. To organize our people to defend our lands, people, water, air, plants, and animals. We are the descendants of 1680 revolutionaries who built the foundation for the community defense for 340 years and will continue that responsibility today. Remember that, there's power in that. Everything that you are descendants of assimilation, colonization, boarding schools, missing murdered Indigenous women. There's atrocities always going around. And I just want to reiterate that, to remember your power and who you are as an Indigenous woman. Going on to the next slide. The formation of the Pueblo Indigenous Community Defense. Well, the formation of the Pueblo Indigenous Community Defense, especially for PAA, bred from the atrocities they had seen. You know, the heart-aching events that had unfolded on Standing Rock. Our co-directors had the opportunity to be out there on the forefronts and the front lines and see this. The tear gas, the elders, you know, our children on horses, they were able to see all of this. They are a part of history now and forever will be. And they wondered as they got home, you know, how can we keep propelling? How can we move with this like emotion, this power, this hurt? Well, here we are. They created PAA, and look how far we've come. It's beautiful how massive we've moved as a unit, and how we convey and talk to each other. And I feel like that's an important thing when it comes to community organizing, and especially community defense, is how you understand people, is if you have empathy, humbleness, and a way to convey your message. Even if it's hard for you to speak about it, vulnerability is decolonial as heck. You know, and I think that's one thing that we all need to remember too as well. Pueblo Indigenous Community Defense. Right now, I would like to take the moment to allow you guys to figure out an intention. And I like to reiterate that, an intention for what you guys want to see, what you guys want to learn. You know, breathe it out into existence to allow yourself to come back to you. You know, this is one thing that a medicine man had taught me was, you know, you have to start with an intention, and it has to come from here. It has to come from the heart. And not only the heart, but the mind connected with that, and allow it to flow. You know, we go into one, protecting our people and our cultural identity. There's communal ways of living, mutual aid, our food sovereignty, water and land management, bottom-up organizing, military and self-defense. We are the engineers of corn, potatoes. You know, this is beautiful. We are definitely a divine community of Indigenous people. Indigenous Pueblo defense. It means to protect our people, our culture, and integrity, our cultural integrity, I should say. Elders being the wisdom and knowledge carriers, youth always our future. And the protection of our community, the land, the air, the water, plants, and animals. community versus individualism. You know, Jay had said it best with the Zapatistas, everything for my people and nothing for me. Everything for my people and nothing for me. Individual ways of thinking, I'm not going to wear my mask because it infringes on my rights. My rights. I don't think that's how it works, you know? And we also have the communal ways of thinking. I wear my mask to protect my community, to protect the people that are around me. You know, and that's just talking about the actions of dealing with today's society, especially with COVID. And going into that, we have a lot of mutual aid efforts, and I'm gonna allow Jay to take the stand.
All right, thank you, Trenton. Having the means to prepare to be ready for any type of crisis. Community defense shouldn't have to be a reclinationary of political climate. Having a community defense model, organization, strategy for mutual aid will help with the readiness and preparedness for crises like COVID-19, climate change, and U.S. imperialism. Mutual aid in response to COVID-19, Indigenous communities were not ready for a global pandemic. Next slide. As Trenton said, food sovereignty, knowing how to grow our own foods, ancestral and traditional foods, respecting the land and the respiratory community garden intelligence. And last but not least, food brings people together. We all know this because who doesn't like sitting around with your family and having a big old meal and then feeling super full at the end, not wanting to do anything. On the right side of the picture, you'll see Aaron Loudon from Acoma Pueblo. He's a perfect example of food sovereignty. His example of processing traditional food and also using ancestral methods. Like in 2020, here in my own community, I saw that some of my relatives couldn't like go out and buy food because they couldn't drive or they were too weak to go out and they didn't want to contract COVID and bring it back to the village. So a lot of our people were going out to the gardens, going out to the fields, making sure we had not just food for our own household, but food for the whole community. And then you also see this with other pueblos doing this, but also making sure their friends from another pueblo have food on their tables, which is one of like a good thing that came out of COVID 2020. And I hate to say this, but you gotta also look for the good within the bad. But this year is a perfect example of that. So next slide, Trenton, please. Here we have land and water management. I want to start off with saying our coworker Julia had said this and said it perfectly. You can't have land back without having water back too. Water for us as Pueblo people is one of the most sacred thing to us. Well, within any Indigenous tribe from around the whole entire world, this is like the most sacred thing to us. We can't grow our fruit, our food. We can't give our next generation water so that they can grow up healthy and grow up big and strong so that they can keep the fight going on for us. I'm gonna read down the slide. Traditional ethnological knowledge, the autonomy to manage our own cultural resources, protecting cultural resources, ecological solution, land back and water back. I would like to pass it on to Trenton.
Yes. Before I get up into bottom-up organizing, I want to make sure and allow you guys to understand who you are. And meaning that it's how do you identify yourself as an Indigenous community member. You can take some time, understand it, write it down. You know, this, I'm not going to be asking you guys anymore, but I just want you guys to internalize this and remember it. You know, how do you identify as an Indigenous spirit? Bottom-up organizing, it's meeting community needs, it's popular education, it's open up community meetings, giving people a space to, you know, have a platform to talk. Traditional governance and societal structures, listening to community voices. Bottom-up organizing is, at the basis, watering our roots to create and foster an environment for resistance to grow. And it has allowed us to be who we are today. We wouldn't be here without bottom-up organizing. As you can see in the multiple pictures, we have Julia here right at the Bureau of Land Management. This is when they're selling parcels of land for pennies on the dollar. That same day, we were actually, public land is stolen land. As you can see, here I am too as well in my Yoda shirt, because, you know, Star Wars every single day. And this was the beginning of a horrendous scene. Actually, this was the Oñate statue. We had been there for about 3 hours. We had listened to a lot of people talk. And after a while, there was Proud Boys, Trump Proud Boys there, and they were being very antagonizing towards the community members. Along the lines of that, they had brought down the statue. But in light of that, there was a Proud Boy who had assaulted a female multiple times, and somebody had stepped in and he pulled his gun on them and he was shot. Bottom-up organizing is a very heart-aching scene, because not only are you putting your life on the line, you're putting your life on the line for something else that allows you to be in an organization and a movement. Military and self-defense. We have the right to form our own military and direct action. Physical training, walk, run to the res, spiritually arming ourselves and letting the land educate you. This to the masses may seem very militant, and we really want to. You know, we are a dual citizenship, and not a lot of people understand that. We are a sovereign nation within a nation. We are like dealing with Mexico for our indigenous communities. So when it comes to this, we want to make sure that we have our own ways of creating our own defensive systems, not only for ourselves, but our community members. Especially for the Jemez people, we have two sides. We have one that is very militant and another that is very militant. Jemez Pueblo itself was actually a powerhouse of military coverage. I am a descendant of the Pecos people. I am the last of the walking 13 families that were decimated. So I walk with pride when I say that. We were feared, not only by indigenous communities, but by settler colonialism. So we need to propel that and keep moving forward with that. And what we demand is liberation of our sacred land, water, people, and ways of life. 2, the self-determination and sovereignty of our own existence. And 3 is what we all need in this world, justice. For Rodney Applewhite, for people who lose their lives to horrendous scenes, you know, and I'm gonna allow Jay to take the stand now.
Thank you, Trenton, again. Here are the reflection questions. So you can write in the chat or write it down. And if you want to talk, we'll let you talk right after I read it. And we just want to hear what all these questions look like for you. Number 1, what does community defense look like in your community? 2, what does the landscape and geography look like in your area? 3, what steps can you take to address the needs in your community? For example, I went with question 1. what does community defense look like for in my community. Basically just closing down the Pueblo, making sure we are protecting our youth and our elderly, the most two important people in our community. Making sure that everybody has a mask to wear if they have to go see their grandparents, make sure they're okay. Making sure our youth have a place to study so that they can get educated and learn the whole world, and make sure we're passing down our language onto them and making sure they're being protected. And then just making sure that the whole community is fed, safe, and that we are okay. So would anyone like to speak? Or yeah, or Trendon, do you want to pick a question and answer?
What steps can you take to address the needs in your community? Well, essentially, I'm doing that right now. I am going to school for Indigenous liberal arts and tribal law. I am trying to propel myself to what my elders always said was, learn as much as you can, leave the res, come back and bring that knowledge for us. So what that means for me is I want to make sure that I learn as much as I can, come back and do governmental work and do infrastructure, and make sure that I can dismantle the governmental systems that they had created. Well, it's not even the ones that we created. It was the one that was given to us. So I want to make sure that I can create a governmental structure and a body to help our people in our community, because I feel like there is a national issue when it comes to this. Council, we all make jokes about it, but it's a very important situation, especially when it comes to dealing with our money. There's a lot of things that we can do with that. We could do scholarships, housing. We could do aid for a lot of the people who are hooked on, drugs, alcoholism, mental health issues. There's a lot that we can do with this money, but it seems to get washed up in new cars and fancy things for a lot of people that really don't need it. I know that it's hard to see that stuff too, and especially growing up in a not so rich home. I was so it's really cool, and it's allowed me to be the man that I am today, which is very humble. And anybody else want to go ahead and take the stand and reflect on any of these questions they have here? You could. Stage is all yours.
I was thinking a lot about the first and the second here in Santa Cruz. And one thing is we've kind of experienced since July, like seeing what the epitome of what I think white liberalism is, just like not actually wanting to do the critical thinking to dismantle the systems that are in place. Like we had the first city sanctioned Black Lives Matter street mural, but we haven't defunded our police significantly. And we also have like a huge or at least significant meth problem here, and there's not really any reform for that. There's like a sign, there's one on one street, there's this big old sign that says like, we've housed 900 people, and then that's where like most of the homeless community in our city decided to like set up and like live there for the season under the sign. So it kind of shows like, hey, this is kind of just for show, no one's really doing anything. And then we also have just a lot of food insecurity from COVID-19, and we all had to evacuate in August from wildfires. So lots of people still facing food insecurity months later. So, and I'm, don't know how to fix it all, but stuff I, like to try to advocate for at least.
No, there's a lot of big issues. That's a lot to understand with. I know dealing with the dismantling the systemic racism that is perpetually here, and, you know, white liberalism. It's hard, you know. Recently, the New Mexico had won a lawsuit against uh, actually it was the Yazzie Martinez case. It was this ideal that we weren't properly educating our Indigenous, our African American students, people with disabilities, and people who are coming from rural and low income housing. And every time we went to the roundhouse, every time, it was always this matter of money. It was like, we need to go beyond the budget, beyond the creation of an educational budget, to understand the facts of what these communities really need at the very roots. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is they talk money. So we need to talk with action. I think Tupac said it best. You know, we were knocking at that door like, please, can we come in? And next is we're breaking the locks and we're entering the house. And I feel like that's where a lot of this community defense comes from. We're very, it creates a very militant mind state. And, you know, you could be a very spiritual person, but it doesn't have to mean you have to be like peace every day and smile when the oppressor is on your back. You know, it means like being able to protect your community. Anybody else want to share their piece?
Yeah, if I could quickly chime in. So I've actually been following all of y'all's like water back campaign. And lately, just like in like school and academia and stuff, I've been doing like a lot of research and writing about water, like water policy, water management here in the Southwest, and like the inequitable distributions of water. And I also, you know, aspire to go to law school. And so I think that's like one way I could definitely help my community, the Navajo Nation, is like getting people just like water, you know, something so essential. That's something that all of our tribal communities are often denied.
No, I feel like that's mainly to deal with, especially when we talk about chocolate will never be ruins. It's this it's especially when we're combating the Bureau of Land Management. You know, it's hard to get those water rights. It's because oil industries and lobbyists tend to hold the control of the minority states. And it's hard, especially for the Navajo Nation, when we go out there, there's like plumes. Actually, New Mexico has the highest methane plume in the United States. It's so bad we create our own climate. And what they do is these oil industries, they come in, they buy they buy the land for pennies on the dollar. They create a Superfund site, and a Superfund site is when a land is completely stripped of its nutrients, and they sell it back to the community. And then they're like, we'll sell it to you for cheap. Well, of course they're going to sell it to you for cheap, and that's where a lot of our Navajo relatives are getting these illnesses from. They're getting cancers. You know, it's horrendous. They're still really messing with us, and it's that Andrew Jackson mentality. And I appreciate you doing that, man. Keep going, just keep striving. And if you ever want to get in contact, I know Julia is a great person to understand and have a good conversation with, because she's always talking about land and water management. I believe that's what she's going to school for, actually. Is there anybody else that wants to communicate or say their piece?
I also want to pose to the group, if anyone has questions, just relevant questions to the overall presentation or to the methods that PAA takes to achieve their goals and their values.
Yeah, lay them on me.
Hi, y'all. This is Audrey. Thanks so much for a great presentation. I'm just curious if you could give us a little bit more about, like, how did Pueblo Election Alliance start? How many people work there? Like, kind of as we learn more from others about how organizations work, maybe you could talk a little bit about how your organization works as an example of a direct action and community defense organization. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Well, Pueblo Action's mission statement is Pueblo Action Alliance is a community-driven organization that promotes cultural sustainability and community defense by addressing environmental and social impacts in Indigenous communities. Well, the community defense and addressing environmental social impacts in Indigenous communities bred from the atrocities that they had seen at Standing Rock. You know, they had seen a movement and it inspired them, and they took that power, they brought it back home, and they're like, well, and they looked around and they're like, it's still affecting our communities out here very rapidly. We're not getting our water back, you know, we're not getting our land back. And so what they wanted to do was create an organization that gave Indigenous and Pueblo people a voice. So we work throughout all 19 Pueblos and you know, Indigenous solidarity all around the world. We continue to do as much as we can, and the Pueblo Action bred from the ideals of the Standing Rock incident, and they will continue to help us propel. I believe we have Julia, we have Marcus, we have Sheldon, we have Reyes, you have us two as well. And I believe we are hiring on 3 more people at this moment. So we are a growing organization. You know, it's a beautiful nonprofit. Any other questions? I don't know if I had properly answered your question, but if not, I know that Jay is very knowledgeable too as well. Anybody else, any questions?
I have a question. So when PAA wants to do a community organizing event, or you want to organize for something that's happening in your community, what are the steps that you all take to execute an action or execute a mutual aid effort?
Well, that depends. Like I said, community defense takes many shapes and forms. I remember with our first involvement in PAA, me and Jay, we actually went to the Roundhouse and we lobbied. We had tabled for an event. We gave out information. We talked about what PAA does. We had made sure that we were talking to people in positions of power to make sure that, you know, we were getting our voice heard. And along the lines of starting a movement, you know, whether it's like, you know, let's get it going, schedule an event, get it going on social media, get some buzz, get some talk around it. And it's much like music promoting or promoting in general, because you're trying to get this event to like grab them and bring them in. It's like an eagle grabbing a salmon, you know? So you have to like grab them, bring them in. And what that means is you have to create this event, make sure that you have people to monitor the event, and just help them out. See, if we're going on the forefronts and the front lines of, you know, we're going to be fighting BLM. We have lawyers on standby too as well, who allow us to be there, and they're the ones that watch the communications and the relations between the cops and the people, so that, you know, if somebody steps out of line or an officer steps out of line, they're the ones that are firsthand going to be like, you know, this is ... I am ... and just continue with that. But, you know, Jay, do you have anything else you'd like to add to the question?
Yeah, just like to answer your question, just like Trenton said, we went to the Roundhouse and we were tabling, talking to all these different kinds of people. And from a personal perspective, I was I got into contact with someone who could help us deal with a lot of alcoholism that goes along in my Pueblo. And my governor from my tribe was there. So I got to make that connection with both of them. And granted, the project's been put on hold due to COVID-19, but that's basically what's happening was that PA had given me an opportunity not to only hopefully save my community from drugs and alcohol, but then I was given an opportunity to speak for MMIW, which I was in another program, Summer Policy Academy, which a lot of my friends from different pueblos had given me an idea to basically just have a self-defense class in every pueblo for all the schools that are in the pueblos, to have it mandatory, to give out pepper spray, to give out those keychains that make loud noises to the younger kids, to make sure that they are defending themselves. PAA has taught me how to organize all these things. And granted, because of COVID-19, a lot of these projects were put on hold. They have taught me to not look for the problem, but see what the issue is, to find help, to ask for help, make sure we know what we're doing, to make sure that we have every little corner, every little thing checked, and then to also just kind of dive head in and just help our community in any ways possible. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, it's mainly just dealing with the community. You know, it's the essential part of it. It's the community, the heart. You know, it's connecting and talking to people. It's taking leaps of faith. You know, it's taking small steps. It's just bottom up organizing. Any questions? Anything else? Anybody want to answer anything? If not, we will continue, and I believe that will be it for the end of this presentation. All right. Well, how you guys feeling? You guys feeling good? Yeah? How do you feel as an Indigenous woman, as an Indigenous man, as an Indigenous spirit, non-binary, binary, whatever you are, and whatever you may be? It is a beautiful world. Remember to respect your elders, teach your youngins, and talk to anybody and everybody that you can. I believe that if you remain humble and communicate and be vulnerable, you can get anywhere in this world. It has allowed me to be, you know, very influential for my friends, the people that are around me too as well. All right. Any questions? Anything else?
To the group, I highly recommend following PAA. I think they do a really phenomenal job of incorporating the things we've talked about on leadership, of making sure that their organization and their values are really in line first with the needs of the community. I think the way they take steps to make sure that the community is always involved in the actions and the policies that they're trying to change. And I think they just have I think Julia herself has an amazing rhetoric on what it means to be a sovereign nation, to get protection for water and get protection for land. And so I would highly recommend that. And I just want to extend thanks to all of you from PAA for talking to us. I believe we're right at time. So thank you for that also.
Thank you, for giving us this opportunity to propel our voices and make a movement, you know. Anybody from PAA like to introduce themselves or say goodbye, say good morning, you know, always leave us off on a prayer.
Good morning, you guys. I would like to say thank you to our youth organizers. You guys killed it. You guys did a really great job. I'd like to thank Amber and Leadershift for inviting Pueblo Action Alliance to this space. It's really empowering when we see other Indigenous people and other people who are in the EJ work acknowledging the work that we're doing and how we're making sure that it is carefully done from a bottom-up organizing base. Yeah, and I just want to give another special shout out to Jay and Trenton because they completed a year youth internship with us, and we're so excited that in the new year we're going to be hiring them as our new youth organizers. So we truly believe that, you know, the youth voices need to be heard, and we appreciate you listening to them today. And again, I dropped all the links if you want to watch their YouTube videos of their projects, the Water Back campaign led by our EJ director, Alliance director, Julia Bernal. And yeah, we're just thank you for inviting us here. We hope that you learned something and learn from our youth.
Yay, Trenton and Jay, good job, good job. This was like their first workshop that they've done, so they did an excellent job. Very proud of them. This is Sheldon right here, our creative strategist. Just thank you for inviting us and to share your platform with us. If there is anything you all need from myself or the rest of our staff, please feel free to reach out. You can find all of our contact info on our website. And again, Amber, thank you for reaching out and for the shout out. You know, the Water Back campaign is collaborative. It's youth driven. It's gonna be the paradigm shift. So again, thank you, Herkim Shim. And again, great job, Jay and Trenton. I'm just like all the feels over here. Good job.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you all and have a great day, PAA.